Is that good? We on? All right. Well, welcome everybody here at the Atlantic Theaters, and on behalf of those of us who occupy this room maybe more frequently than some of you, just want to say welcome and glad that you're here, and hope that you feel at home while you are here. You probably figured all this out already, but the lobby is where you came in. There's a bunch of coffee and snacks and tea, and all that is for free, so help yourself. And the bathrooms, if you head down the hallway, take a right, you'll find them. You'll run right into them over here, parallel there. That's it. I don't have too much to say. And so without further ado, I'd like to call up the three mayors of the beaches. Come on up.
Greetings, everybody. I'm Ellen Glasser. I'm the mayor of Atlantic Beach. Beaches Vineyard is located in Atlantic Beach, so we welcome you here. Thank you so much to Bobby and Beaches Vineyard for making this possible. There are some people that I would like to recognize and thank. First of all, I'd like to welcome members of the Atlantic Beach Police Department. Chief Vic, where are you? Back there. And then we have, hold your applause, Commander Tiffany Layson and Detective Spissel and Manini. And then we also have, I'm so happy to see you, Captain H2O. That's John Phillips, the head of our lifeguard corps. So thanks for being here. Our deputy city manager, Kevin, is somewhere around here, but we're pleased to support this event. So I'm really privileged to be up here with these other lady mayors to do what we think is really important for our entire beaches community and talk about this serious problem that we have with the opioid epidemic, particularly the dangers of fentanyl. So this is an issue that hits with me both professionally because of my past experience in law enforcement and as a teacher and as mayor. But it is also an issue that touches me personally. My stepson passed away in December 2021. He was an opioid addict. He had other medical conditions, but he died alone. I don't talk about it very much because it's very difficult. And I didn't ask for help. So I hope that other people will learn from hearing me say that we need to ask for help. And so thank you for being here. So putting this together, I made a call to TJ Ward. Where are you? He's not in the room. Oh, there he is. And I said, we'd really like to do something from the three beaches to talk about this issue. And he was like a gift from God because he said, oh, we can do that. So I want to thank TJ and Project Opioid. I want to thank the Beaches Division of the Jacks Chamber for helping to get this going. I want to thank all of the people who have come with their agencies, their organizations to talk about the resources that are available to you. I want to thank the other lady mayors for going on this journey together for this and other issues. But I want to thank all of you for being here, and I hope you'll spread the word because we can do good with programs like this, and we can save lives. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Glasser. I'm Elaine Brown. I have the honor of being the mayor of Neptune Beach. First, a big shout out to my chief of police, Chief Pike, who's here and joined us, and thank you for being here. A nice applause for this guy. He's amazing. His department, all of them, and such a partnership. We have a partnership as mayors, and we have a saying that is three cities, one community, and that's so true. But you know, our arms really wrap around, was that it's so sad that we're having this meeting. And then I started looking at, because I too have had to reach out for help for a daughter, and here tomorrow, these wonderful women that are right over here as a resource, they helped her. They helped our family because they helped her. And that was the hope. That was the good news, that there's hope. There are resources. There are so many resources here tonight that are so wonderful. And so I kind of switched from how sad to how hopeful we can all be and how we should be. It's my pleasure to join you. This is important to all communities. It's wonderful to see you here. Everyone has a story, so may I welcome you and say to each and every one of you, we're here for you. We're doing this for you, and we're doing it for the whole community. And I thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you. I'm Chris Hoffman, Mayor of Jacksonville Beach, and I always go third in this group, maybe because I'm the newest or the furthest south, I'm not sure, but it gives me the opportunity to say ditto to everything that they said before. But in particular, I want to thank Mayor Glasser for really taking the lead on this. And as we've been talking about it, and we went on a news program yesterday, it's just really been resonating probably in all of our minds. This isn't just something that affects the individual. It affects the families. It affects the first responders who are responding to these overdoses. And it's a problem that is not somewhere else. It's not in another community somewhere else. It's not in another state or another country. It's everywhere. I'm beginning to realize that I know many people who have been impacted, and it's probably getting to the point where everyone in this room, I'm sure, can say that because you're here, but probably it's not uncommon throughout our entire community. So I'm so glad that we've come together as Three Beaches, one community to start to take this head on. There are resources. We are seeing settlement dollars and things like that starting to come. So we have to work together to put those to best use for prevention and treatment and everything that we can do to not do this event in future years. So that would be my goal, that coming from this year, we can make a lot of progress in our beaches community. And I thank you guys for taking time out. It's a busy week. I know there's a lot going on tonight, but you chose to be here, and I thank you for it, and I appreciate you. And next.
He loves surfing and baseball and football. He was a brother, a son, and a friend. And now part of a growing list of people who have died of an accidental overdose.
Big, beautiful 6'6" athlete, friend. I never thought that my beautiful baby would end up like this.
Holding the urn that contains her youngest son's ashes, Rebecca Scheller knows how deadly fentanyl can be.
My family's heart is broken. I've never felt a pain like this in my life. It's a pain that doesn't stop.
Her son Max was just 24 years old when he died last spring. His death certificate and toxicology report showed that he had cocaine, meth, and fentanyl in his system when he died of an accidental overdose.
I put coconut oil in my coffee that week just started. And there was a heart in my coffee. And I snapped a picture and I sent it to my friend and I said, there's a heart in my coffee. And then the shock went through my body. And I knew he was gone.
Her intuition was right. Her son was found in the parking lot of a Palm Coast restaurant where he collapsed on his way to get food.
And I remember walking through the bedroom going, oh my God, what do I do? What do I wear? What do I do? How do I do this? How do I get this car? And drive 45 minutes to be told that my baby's gone.
Max had been in and out of rehab. His addiction, she says, started years earlier. First alcohol, then marijuana, later cocaine and pills.
Max didn't want to be an addict. Max and I had actually planned when he got his life together to work together to help other people. Unfortunately, now I'm helping him. I'm helping other people with Max in his own home.
She doesn't think Max had any idea that what he took was laced with fentanyl, a drug lethal in amounts as small as the tip of a pencil.
These pills look so much like the manufactured pills, you can't tell the difference.
When she went through his phone, she found this on his Snapchat, someone offering to sell him pills. Counterfeit pills laced with fentanyl are indistinguishable from prescription meds.
It is absolutely a crisis. If we look at 2020, Duval County experienced the highest rate of overdose deaths we've ever had. 73% of those deaths were fentanyl related. over half occurred in the Gen Z and millennial populations.
TJ Ward is the director of Project Opioid Jacksonville, a coalition of community leaders working to confront the overdose crisis.
So it's crucial for us to bring awareness to this issue and to educate people on, what the crisis looks like now. The new narrative, which is fentanyl is laced in everybody's drug of choice, and that is what is causing the majority of the overdose deaths.
It's been 11 months since Rebecca lost her son.
Hey Mom, I just want to call and thank you for the birthday present, and I love you guys, and I'll talk to you later.
His message on her voicemail, a reminder of the beautiful life lost to a preventable tragedy.
I think Max would say, sorry, Mama, I didn't mean to. But I think Max would tell people, don't do it. One decision, one small decision, can make the break, whether you wake up tomorrow or you end up in the urn.
One hit of marijuana laced with fentanyl, one pill or drug laced with fentanyl can end your life. So parents, please check your social media accounts, your child's social media accounts. Look at their phones, know what they're doing, and talk to them about just how dangerous it can be to take anything not prescribed to you. To learn more about Project Opioid and how you can get involved, look for this story on firstcoastnews.com.
So what you just saw is why we're here this evening, and I just want to say to the Sheller family, I think I can speak on behalf of all of us when I say we're so sorry for your loss, and there are many like the Shellers who have experienced loss here in this community, and that's why we're here today. My name is TJ Ward. I'm the North Florida Director of Advocacy for Project Opioid Jax. We are an initiative that is funded by the Ford Foundation, and we're facilitated through the Jacksonville Chamber of Commerce. We assemble key leaders across North Florida to confront the overdose crisis, and it's a privilege to have worked with Mayor Glasser, Mayor Hoffman, and Mayor Brown to coordinate this event. Thank you for asking us to be a part of this. You saw Max Sheller's story, and unfortunately, this is all too common in communities across our country, including right here in Jacksonville, Atlantic, and Neptune beaches. In 2020 and 2021, overdose deaths skyrocketed to a number that we could have never imagined, and 2022 has been trending in the same direction. Synthetic opioids like fentanyl, as well as polydrug mixtures and fake pills disguised as prescription medications, are driving the current overdose crisis. And so our goal for this evening is to bring awareness to the dangers related to fentanyl and illicit substances, and to provide you with information and action steps so that you can be a part of the solution. Communities have got to come together and implement solutions that save lives. And so tonight you're going to hear from subject matter experts. They're going to share data, they're going to share statistics, percentages of increase related to overdoses and overdose deaths. But as you hear these numbers, as you see stuff on the screen, graphs and maps, and see all of the different percentages and the data points, I want you to think about something. Because sometimes we can lose sight of the fact that each one of those numbers, each one of those data points represents a human life that has been lost. And the impact and the reach is far. The ripple effect occurs every time someone dies of an overdose. You're talking about families that are impacted, friends that are impacted, co-workers, acquaintances, even communities that are impacted by this. And so as we talk about this tonight, think about the fact that each of the data points that we discuss are individual human lives that have been lost. So real quickly, what to expect during the rest of our time. We're going to get into our panel discussion here in a minute, and some subject matter experts here are going to describe how this issue is impacting Jacksonville and the beaches communities. And then you'll see a brief presentation that outlines 2 action steps that you can take right away, that you can put into place that will make an immediate impact. And then we're going to wrap up the evening with an interview of a gentleman who has lived experience with substance misuse. We're going to talk about his journey to recovery and what he's doing right here in the beaches area to help others who are going through what he went through. So we're going to begin the panel discussion by having each member briefly share their title, the role they play within their organization, and we're going to start with you, Dr. Jorenby.
Thank you, TJ. Hopefully this is working. My name is Dr. Lanty Elizabeth Dornby, and I am Chief Medical Officer of Lakeview Health. We are a substance abuse and treatment mental health facility in Jacksonville, and we've been here for 21 years. Katie Armstrong's nodding at me. And so we have about 200 beds for people that come in that are needing detox or residential treatment, and then we step them down to the next level of care, which might be an outpatient level of care. I'm also an addiction psychiatrist as well, so mental health is part of my specialty.
My name is Mark Rowley. I'm a lieutenant with Jacksonville Fire Rescue, and since 2016, 2017, I've had the joy and pleasure of working with our elected leaders, like Councilman Salem and others, to pull data for the fire department. I do a lot of little nerd work there and write queries in databases, pull work, and then use that data to help our elected leaders and people like you make informed decisions about where to place resources. I also have I've had the joy and pleasure of working as a nurse at Lakeview under the direction of Dr. Jorenby, and I'm currently a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner intern at Gateway.
I'm Ron Salem. I'm a member of the Jackson City Council, presently the vice president. Prior to coming on the city council, I'm a pharmacist by training and was a member of the Florida Board of Pharmacy, which I did from 2003 to 2011 during the height of the opioid crisis, frankly. Shutting down pharmacies, suspending licenses, pharmacists, and for my time on the council, I'm the healthcare guy. So anything related to healthcare I get, which includes Project Save Lives, our opioid program, and I'm coordinating our efforts for the dollars coming to the city through the various settlements with the wholesalers, the drug companies, etc., and trying to determine how we're going to allocate those dollars to help this community.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing your expertise with us. We'll start with you, Dr. Jorenby. Can you please provide an overview of the overdose crisis, including the different waves of the epidemic and what the crisis looks like now?
Yes, absolutely. So the research and the folks that are really studying the opioid crisis track it back into the mid-1990s. And Ron, I know you were kind of in the middle of all that too, you mentioned. And in the 1990s, docs were really encouraged to prescribe pain medications. The industry was encouraging us, telling us it was safe, and doctors were really buying into this. We were really paying a lot of attention to chronic pain, which in and of itself is very important. But unfortunately, this practice and what was happening in the mid-1990s, it really flooded the country with pain medications. People that should not have access did, whether these be teenagers or young adults or people with mental health problems, people that had previous addictions or active addictions. And so when you put medications that actually are very addictive in the hands of folks that shouldn't have them, that's really where it started. The crisis began there. And then the states started shutting it down. States started to track people that were doctor shopping, people that were obtaining multiple prescriptions. And so once you take away access to one type of drug, another pops up. And so that led to the second wave, which we believe was the heroin epidemic. And so you saw it go from prescription medications such as things like oxycodone, OxyContin, and then it led into heroin because it was cheaper to get. It was easier, it was on the streets, and people couldn't get their prescription pills. And then that led into where we are now, really, and part of the fourth wave. But the third wave is the fentanyl wave. And fentanyl is, as we're going to all talk about tonight, very lethal. It's 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine, for instance. And it's very easy to make, very cheap, easy to access. I know a number of the folks up here are going to talk about how quick it kills. And it's small enough, just small grains are enough to take somebody out. We are seeing it manufactured into pills that look like a prescription. So people are accessing things on the street. They think it's a real prescription, and it turns out to be fentanyl. You can get it on social media. And then what we're also seeing is there's a greater wave of people dying from overdoses that have other drugs in their system. And so that could be methamphetamine, and that could be other things like cocaine. A variety of drugs are being found in their system. And unfortunately, that's what they're considering the fourth wave, is kind of the wave that encompasses other drugs, a lot of times stimulants. And this is all tracked since the 1990s to where we are now. And TJ mentioned we've seen the highest number of people dying from overdoses we've ever counted, which I believe we were at just around 108,000 at the end of last year. And unfortunately, I think we're going to track higher when the numbers are counted this year too.
Thank you. Lieutenant Riley, what does the overdose crisis currently look like here in the Beaches communities?
All right. Well, what I'd like is, can we put up a slide of the city of Jacksonville, please? Thank you. All right. So this is Jacksonville. So what I'd like you to do is just, for a moment, find maybe where you hang out the most. Maybe it's where you live. Maybe it's where you play. Maybe it's where you go see your kids or grandkids. Maybe it's where you go to church. Just put your eye on that spot. Next slide. This is the past 12 months. This is just up to yesterday. So past 12 months of opiate overdose responses in the city of Jacksonville. It's everywhere. Next slide. This is non-opiate related. So, and this is our best clinical impression of the paramedics. So they're not presenting with those signs of opiate overdose. However, maybe it's, as Dr. Dramby said, polysubstance, alcohols is included in this. And the next slide, that's them combined. It's almost 7,000. Almost 7,000 calls when we combine them out like that. There's a heat map there, just giving you another way to look at what we would call the hot spots. And I'm going to stay on this for a little bit because the maps that you're seeing, I want you to know that as much as I've heard just in some responses, like some surprise here, this data, we are looking at it, particularly our law enforcement in the room. They're aware of this, and they're using this even with our military to develop tactics and strategies to target these areas in need. Next slide. So I just ran some numbers, some demographics, and this is specific to opiate related. So I pulled all the patient data, and what we're looking at here is on the top left, you'll see day of a week. Typically, it's balanced out. There's not a big change there. On the top right, you'll notice the age. It's that 30 to 39-year-old is typically what we are seeing with our opiate overdoses. On the bottom left, 73% are white, 20% African American, 4% are Latino. And with the African American community, in the past 8 years, that number has doubled. Absolutely astounding. So we have been working with different leaders in the Northwest Quadrant, but that has doubled. Even though it's 20%, it's doubled. In the middle here, you'll see that predominantly it is male. 67% of the opiate patients, opiate overdose, are male. And then on the bottom right here, you'll look at the time frame. So you can see our calls are picking up right there about 5 to 6 o'clock in the evening. So is when they're picking up, and they are at the lowest right about 4 to 5 in the morning. So that's an overview of the city. And what did the beaches look like? So in 2021, Jacksonville Fire Rescue responded to 115 overdoses between Jacksonville Beach, Neptune, and Atlantic Beach. And approximately, depends on which beaches, Jack's Beach is about 50% of those were identified as opiate related, and Atlantic Beach went up to about 67. But all in all, it's generally about 57% are opiate related that we're seeing. And to put that in comparison, this graph accounted for alcohol, but last year we did almost 5,000 responses in the whole city. So the beaches represents almost 2.5% of our overdose responses. So, thank you.
Vice President, Mr. Vice President, Councilman Salem, please provide a brief overview of Project Save Lives and describe how the city of Jacksonville is utilizing this program to address overdose among its residents.
Sure. It was approximately 5 years ago when your own Bill Gulliford, who was a city council representing the beaches, which I wish could be here tonight, but I understand he's in Montana. Seems to spend more time here than here. Called a public meeting at City Hall because of the crisis 5 years ago of the deaths due to opioids. And through that process, he met Dr. Pond with Gateway. And through that process, Project Save Lives was born. It's a partnership between JFRD, my colleagues right here, the City of Jacksonville, and Gateway Community Services. This program is funded by the City of Jacksonville. It's approximately $1 million a year that we have funded that through the City Council. And I commend the City Council 5 years ago for having the knowledge and the foresight to do that. Basically, it's a program where we have peer review specialists. These guys pick up the overdoses, take them to, there are 7 emergency rooms that we have peer review specialists in. The patients are stabilized in the emergency room, and once they're stabilized, they're approached and say, do you want to get treatment? Do you want to get well? And approximately 50% say no. And some of those they have tracked maybe back in that same emergency room up to 3 or 4 times in a single day. If you can believe that. And approximately half consent to treatment. Some of those go immediately to Gateway into treatment. Others are followed by our peer review specialists for as long as they're needed, frankly. We are about ready to expand this program into 3 more emergency rooms here in Jacksonville, greater Jacksonville, and we have had, I don't know how many thousand, I want to say 7,000 or 8,000. We've had 9 deaths since this program has been implemented for people that were considered to treatment of some sort. So it's a wonderful program. We will hopefully continue to fund it, and it's sort of a model. The Attorney General has come to Jacksonville, and it's a program that some leaders want to see expanded to other communities throughout Florida.
Dr. Jornby, based on several credible sources, we know illicit fentanyl is driving the overdose crisis. Can you please explain what fentanyl is? I know you touched on it just a minute ago, but explain what that is and why it is so dangerous.
So fentanyl is originally it was devised to be an anesthetic, so they use it in surgeries, but they also use it for pain medication. A lot of times people that have cancer pain, for instance, but what it's also become is illicit, and that means that basically people are making it in labs, whether it be south of the border or here in the States or across the ocean in Asia. And they manufacture it. It's very cheap to make this illicit fentanyl, so it's not produced in a qualified lab by a pharmaceutical company. It's created by people that are drug dealers, basically. And so they're creating this product. It's incredibly potent. It's 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine, which is significant. And that's what really kills people. It's tiny grains that you can slip into any type of drug. You can mix it in with something. People might think they're buying cocaine, for instance, and they end up buying fentanyl. And so this is what's really scary, is that people think that maybe they're buying marijuana, or maybe they're buying something else, and they end up buying fentanyl, and it kills them immediately. They think they're getting one product and they're getting another. And I think that the more enterprising people are out there, the more different types of fentanyl you're going to see, and you're going to hear that term analog, which just means that they alter the product just a little bit. So it changes the potency, it changes the structure just a tiny bit, and then that draws people in, it gets them addicted, it kills them, which is really unfortunate, because that's why we're here. It's really one of the most lethal things out there. And what I think is most heartbreaking are the young adults, or even the teenagers who might be experimenting. That's what teenagers do. That's what young adults do, and they don't know that one experimentation may kill them.
Lieutenant Riley, this is a two-part question for you. The first one is, who is at risk for addiction to opioids and fentanyl overdose?
So I want to first take a look at a addiction. Who's at risk for addiction? And medically, I'll say it's going to be the young person, that 18, really the person up to 25 years of age. And Dr. Dranby can speak more on this, just because there's a part of our brain, particularly that prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that makes good decisions, that knows about or thinks about consequences. That part of the brain truly is not fully developed until mid-20s, based on which study you're reading. So anybody who's using substances, or the brain is much more susceptible to being hijacked up to that age of 25. So young persons are at risk for addiction. Anybody with a history of PTSD, mental health issues that's not being treated. Oftentimes medications are used for numbing. And so somebody that is looking to numb, they're going to numb however they can. And so anybody that has unresolved, untreated mental health issues is at risk. Also, anybody with a history of substance use disorder, but that's a diagnosis. Let's talk about before you get there. Let me just tell you a little bit about what it is. If you or if you're thinking more about using that substance, I mean, it's in your thought all day. You can't wait to go use it. You're planning, scheming, it's in your head. You've thought about cutting back. Maybe your friends have said, I think you need to cut down on the drinking, or cut down on this, or cut down on those pills. Maybe you get angry when somebody talks to you about it. And you keep using despite consequences. You know, I'm going to miss work. I'm going to be hungover. I'm going to miss the party. I'm not going to be able to go attend and hang out with my friends or my family, but I'm going to keep using. I'm just giving you a basic definition of somebody that may have a substance use disorder. And a lot of people may have that, but they're never going to go in and see somebody like Dr. Dranby to get that help or that diagnosis. So that's a little bit about, and also social, family upbringing, environment. Environment plays a lot, and there's a whole question, nature versus nurture. And there are studies that show that people who have relatives that suffer from any type of substance use, be it alcohol or pills or illicit drugs, they are at risk for that as well. And sometimes that's just because being in that environment where it was condoned, it was maybe even encouraged, the use was encouraged. I can't tell you how many clients and patients I'm seeing where, you know, at 7 years old, they're being told mom or dad gave them that beer, or, you know, they came home to find their parents using, and that person's, of course, at risk. So that's a little bit of the risk factors of addiction. But what about overdose? One pill will kill. And they're both going to talk about this, particularly, you know, Councilman Salem is going to talk about this. As Dr. Dranby said, we are in a different phase right now. You do not have to be an addict, a person who uses drugs, to die from an overdose. Sadly, we are seeing more people who do not identify, do not believe they have a substance use problem. In no way, shape, or form do they think they were addicted and they've died because of one pill that their friend gave them, one pill they took from the community pharmacist, AKA not a pharmacist, all right? A pill that they did not get from, you know, a licensed pharmacy or provider. And again, Councilman Sam's going to talk more about that. But to your question, who's at risk? We are all at risk. And don't take pills that aren't yours. Don't share your pills as much as you may want to help, and it may be good intended. And I know too many people who've died, and possibly like Max Scheller, from one pill.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the key points of what we're trying to get across this evening is this is no respecter of persons, and we can't experiment with drugs anymore. Those days are long gone. So, Councilman Salem, can you explain what naloxone is? A lot of people know it by the brand name Narcan. How does it work to alter the effects of an overdose?
It's a blocker of the opioid receptor in a very basic term, and it's absorbed very quickly, whether it's IV, subcutaneously, or nasally. And I know we're going to be doing a demonstration nasally. Works very quickly. The key part to using Narcan, it does no harm to anyone that has not overdosed. So when in doubt, I tell people use it because you're not going to do any harm to the patient if they have not overdosed. And you'll know sometimes with the illicit drugs we have, it may take multiple doses. I'm always interested when I get the report from the fire department every month that comes to me, is how many overdoses there were and how many Narcan doses were given. Because there are more Narcan doses given than overdoses, because they are having to give multiple doses sometimes in order to revive the patient. So it's a very effective drug. It's readily available. I would encourage you and your community groups to get trained on it. We have a lady within Mark's department that's doing that. Church groups, community groups. She'll come out and train you and provide you a dose of Narcan. So please take advantage of that.
Yep. And our friends at Drug Free Duval are here this evening somewhere. I know they have a table set up and can help with online training if you can't be there in person or if you don't have a group to attend that's doing that training. So I want to go back to Lieutenant Rowley because I said a two-part question. I forgot the second part. So here's the follow-up to that question. What are some signs that a person has overdosed? Can you share with us kind of what to look for in those situations?
Yes. So specific for opioid overdose, typically, first thing you're going to notice is a decrease in level of consciousness. They're going to be passed out. They're going to be difficult to arouse. They may also, they are generally going to have depressed respirations, so you may notice that they're barely breathing, not breathing at all. May have blue tinged skin or what we call cyanosis just due to lack of oxygen. And also their pupils. Their pupils are going to, we call it meiosis, constricted pupils. And the best way I can explain it is the opioid says go to sleep, on that receptor. And by going to sleep, whenever I go to sleep, I know I close my blinds, my window blinds. And the pupils close. They're closing the blinds so it's dark. And they go to sleep. And then they die. If we do not get Narcan, we don't get somebody there to help them. So within 30 seconds to 2 minutes, fentanyl, it can be that quick. We are going to people with the needle in their arm. They didn't even have a chance.
Sobering thought, and that's why it's so important for us to get the word out and to help bring awareness and for you to take this information to your circles, your spheres of influence, and share this with them. Dr. Jornby, why is it so difficult for someone to overcome drug addiction, particularly when it involves opioid use disorder?
One thing, before I answer that question, I just want to hit on what Councilman Salem said earlier. And this is very true, is that the fentanyl out there, we need to give multiple doses of Narcan. And something that we've seen where I work is that we'll have people that have come to us from overdoses, and they've received 6, 7, I think even one person got 8 doses within a short period of time, because you just cannot knock that opiate off the receptor in their body. You have to keep hitting them. So I think it's really important for people to understand that if you have a couple of doses with you, and for instance, I carry one in my purse all the time, but if you don't bring them back that first time, keep hitting them. And that's because the fentanyl that's out there now is so powerful. And in fact, we changed our protocols where I work because we know that people are going to need multiple doses. That's just the world we're in right now. But getting to what you're asking, TJ, about why it's so difficult, Lieutenant Rowley hit on it earlier, is that the brain is taken hostage. It's hijacked. So if you think about a young brain, someone in their teens, for instance, they still have about 10 years. That brain is still under construction. So anything you introduce during a construction period like that, whether it be alcohol or opiates or cocaine or even tobacco, cigarettes, because, kids experiment, you're going to change how that brain is developing. And you can turn off the front of the cortex, which is what Lieutenant Rowley's talking about. There's prefrontal cortex, helps you make good decisions, keeps you from jumping off that cliff that Mom is always talking about. And when it doesn't develop the way it should, then you develop problems in all sorts of areas, one of them being the reward center. We all have a reward center. It keeps us alive. We learn that certain things are safe. We want to keep going back to safe people or safe places, take care of ourselves. But if that reward center is taken over by drugs or alcohol, that person thinks that's what they need to stay alive. And so that's really why it's so powerful. Drugs are a brain disease. Addiction, I believe, and we have defined it as a brain disease or a medical disease for many decades now. But I think we're slow as a society to accept that. Because if you have someone who's coming into the ER and their sugars are in the 800s, of course you're going to treat them. But that same person that's coming to the ER that is addicted to alcohol, we don't treat them the same, and that's just not right because this is a medical illness. And I just think we have to alter the way we look at this whole area of medicine, addiction, and mental health.
And this next one's for you, Lieutenant Rowley, and kind of accompanies what Dr. Jorby was saying. Some people would say that addiction is a moral failure and people just need to quit using drugs. As a matter of fact, I was looking on Facebook, somebody had posted about this very event and inviting people to come out, and somebody commented underneath that post, well, just tell them to quit using drugs. Just tell them to stop. So the question is, can you please speak to why this misconception is inaccurate and the dangers related to this type of stigma? So Dr. Jorby kind of spoke about that, but the dangers related to that stigma and stigma in general surrounding this.
Thank you. And just to back up off of what Dr. Dramby said about the hijacking, the what's going on in the brain. Actually, what's a moral failure? To me, and just for me, a moral failure is doing something I know is not right. Well, so as somebody who suffers from addiction, I could tell you that a lot of people that suffer from addiction, the ought to in their brain, the ought to stop, doesn't match their ability. They can't stop. All right, because of this neuroplasticity, this rewiring of the brain, because of these substances and how strong they are. There's typically, we say, the 3 or 4 C's of addiction: compulsion, thinking about it all the time, craving, and then just planning, scheming for it. Then you do it without consequence, regardless of the consequences. Why would somebody keep using when they know they're going to lose custody of their daughter? That's crazy, right? That's got to be a moral failure. No. That's a lack of control. That is a disease, a lack of control. And if anything, I would even suggest that rather than, if somebody says it's a moral failure, I'll meet you halfway to say, you know what? It's a disease of choice. It's a disease of 1,000 choices because the choices are made right here in this part of the brain, but this part of the brain that's pleasure and reward can't talk to it. So it's an inability to make good choices in that area. I mean, if that's as far as I can go in that to help somebody understand that this is not a moral failure. The person who's suffering from addiction, they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. They're damned if I stop using it, and they're damned if they use it. And why? There are many people, maybe early in their use, used to get high, used because it felt good. And I can tell you a lot of patients I see now, they no longer use to get high. They use so they stop hurting. They use because it physically hurts when they're not using because their body has become dependent on that. They use because they're suffering. Damn if you do, damn if I don't. That's not a moral failure. But what I would postulate that is what would determine whether or not this is a moral failure is how you and I treat these people. Thank you.
Yeah, I think another thing that I would want to make clear this evening is when it comes to this issue, especially when you deal with people who are struggling, show them some compassion. Understand exactly what Lieutenant Rowley said is true. They cannot help it. And so the best thing we can do is show some grace and compassion and just kind of err on the side of that. Do whatever you can to help them and point them in that direction to get the help they need. So Councilman Salem, please talk about the opioid abatement funding that Duval County is going to receive. Can you give like an overview of that and then talk about how it's going to be used here in our community?
Let me go back for a minute and talk about why we're getting that money. Most of you know there were three major players that caused this crisis that the doctor was talking about. It were pharmacists, physicians, and the drug wholesalers. Let's go back for a minute. As a pharmacist, there was the classic story is the pharmacy in West Virginia of about 1,000 people in this town, and this pharmacy was ordering tens of thousands of OxyContin pills. Tens of thousands. People were coming from everywhere, and physicians were writing prescriptions, and that pharmacy was filling them, and because there was no controls. Pharmacists felt like if they got a prescription, they filled it. Wholesalers if the pharmacy orders it, I'm going to send it, and we had pill mills everywhere. And what we have done through a lot of regulation through the pharmacy profession, the medical profession, and the wholesalers, we have stopped a lot of that, almost completely, which is why we have the illicit drugs, why we moved to heroin, as she said, and now fentanyl. The wholesalers are monitored like you wouldn't believe. As a pharmacist that runs a pharmacy, if my order of controlled substances changes a little bit, I get phone calls. What's going on? Have you added business? As things change, okay? We've closed all the pill mills. Physicians are not doing that anymore. The major retail pharmacies, Walgreens and CVS, were fined heavily due to the money we're getting because their pharmacists were not carefully evaluating those prescriptions. They were just filling them. So there was a huge lawsuit. Jacksonville, Florida is getting $85 million through this process over 18 years. Let me repeat that number. $85 million over 18 years is coming in, and that's after all the legal fees, that's the money coming here. A small portion of that is going to the beach communities through an interlocal agreement that Jacksonville has with each beach community and Baldwin, way over on the west side. But the overwhelming 95% of those dollars are coming to Jacksonville, and there are specific ways that we have to use those dollars. Treatment, education, etc. So, first of all, we haven't gotten a dime yet, but we're expecting dollars very soon. I had a meeting yesterday, and our attorneys are telling us it's going to come soon. So we have set up a task force of JFRD, myself, members of the Jacksonville City Administration, and we're brainstorming how we should use these dollars and how shown here, I can tell you they look exactly like the real drug. They're very good at what they do. So just be very careful with that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just had to say that.
No, absolutely. Yes, sir. Dr. Jornby, what role does mental health play in substance misuse and addiction?
Thanks, TJ. So, Lieutenant Rowley mentioned this earlier, but there is a high track of people with post-traumatic stress disorder or trauma that can develop substance use. And where I work, we have a women's facility and a men's facility. The women's facility, I'd say these are anecdotal type numbers. I can't tell you exactly what last month was, but they usually are about 75 to 80% of the women coming to us for treatment have had either childhood trauma or trauma as an adult. And we're talking either sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect. It's pretty significant. And so I think you hit it right on the head, Lieutenant Rowley, that they're trying to numb. They're trying to forget. They don't want to remember. I took care of a couple of ladies who had been sex trafficked, and their sex traffickers were giving them drugs to keep them kind of compliant and in line with what they wanted from them. And they told me that they continued to use after they got out of that situation because they didn't want to remember all the terrible things that happened to them. So this is pretty significant, thinking about mental health. Trauma really is one of the biggest ones, but I see a lot of folks that are dealing with depression. And that depression might follow this substance or it might predate it, and we know that that's a little tough to tell, especially if they're in the middle of detox or they're early in recovery. And so understanding kind of their whole life and getting good histories from their families and really digging into that and treating it if it's there. Anxiety is another high risk for people with substance, whether it's social anxiety or whether it's panic disorder or other types. I think we're a country of worry warts now. We worry about everything, and if you turn on the news, I can understand why. And so all of those conditions really track high with someone that might be trying to deal with it with substances. That's not always the case, and there's more nuance to it, but those are kind of the biggies.
Okay. And so hold on to that.
Oh, sure.
I gotta follow up real quick. And so, we talk about sometimes how the pandemic kind of has taken this
Yes.
to another level. Can you speak to that and why that is the case?
Yeah, we've seen, I think it's been alluded here, but about a 30% increase in overdoses since we started the pandemic. So if you look at numbers from 2019, and this is tracked every year by the CDC, so they looked at numbers of overdoses in 2019, and it was around, I think it was one of the lower numbers we've ever seen. We really kind of just started beating that back with great programs like Project Save Lives, and it was in the 70,000 range, which is still way too high. And then through COVID 2020 and then 2021, 30% increase. And I have seen just from working with folks, and I'm sure you've seen this too, Lieutenant, people were in lockdowns, or they lost their job, or they were worried about their family or their health, or finances were terrible. Heartbreaking stories about people who were in recovery, doing well, got a new job, going to meetings. The pandemic hit, they lost their job, and they overdosed. And it just breaks my heart to hear about these stories, and we would see them. It really magnified everything that was happening. It just made things worse with COVID, all of the stress that we were under. And then I think COVID actually did uncover a lot of what I think had been concealed or ignored was the mental health crisis that we as a nation, I think, are dealing with too. People, we've talked about the stigma, but people with mental health conditions, in my family, we didn't talk about it. I have a father who dealt with things like that. We never spoke about it. No one wanted to admit it, and it was embarrassing. It was shameful. And I think we as a country and as a culture, we have to unmask that. We have to get rid of the stigma, because people do not get treatment if you don't recognize it and you don't talk about it, and then people can die. I know that sounds a bit dramatic, but it really is why we're here tonight.
Councilman Salem, as a doctor of pharmacy, you have
Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and come up there, but I will address the elephant in the room that I usually hear. One of the first questions is always, what does the military have to do with this? Why do we have the military? Why do we have the National Guard here, a part of talking about drugs and overdose, right? So who responds to hurricanes, to disasters? The National Guard. Who responds when there's wildfires? The National Guard. We are in charge of taking care of our state when we're in disastrous situations. So who have they activated when we're in this disastrous situation of an opioid epidemic? The National Guard. We are specialized at strategic planning. We are specialized in going in and finding a conflict and finding the enemy and taking care of that enemy and helping collaborate and helping come together. So that's why the National Guard has been activated. Specifically, our program is called Counter Drug. I specifically work for the Drug Demand Reduction Outreach Program, which is prevention. I want to say a huge thank you to Mayor Hoffman. Where did she go? You were the only person that I heard the last hour and a half that said the word prevention. And you said it when you were doing your introduction. I can't. Yes, treatment is so important. Law enforcement is so important. We have to attack this at all angles. But one of the most important things that I want to stress is the importance of prevention, getting ahead of this. We're not going to arrest our way out of this. We're not going to treat our way out of this. It's a collaborative effort with prevention, with treatment, with law enforcement, and collaborating with all the partners to come together to really address this epidemic. So again, my name is Major Michael Coy. I'm the State Prevention Coordinator for the National Guard. I've got about 8 folks all around the state that are embedded in the local communities and local community-based organizations, coalitions, task forces, and our main job is getting out and pushing the message of prevention and getting to these youth before they ever have that first exposure, before that prefrontal cortex, all the fancy words, are impacted by that early use in the adolescent brain. So the panel did a great job of going through most of my slides for me. So I'm gonna go fast through some of them. If we'll go ahead and bring up the first slide. Just some contact information. These are some of the partners that I work with that our organization works very closely with here in North Florida. At the far left is going to be the HIDA, the North Florida HIDA, which is the high intensity drug trafficking area. And then you've got Project Opioid, obviously with TJ and his team. That's our logo, and then the Community Coalition Alliance. They are the regional drug prevention coalition that works with all the local North Florida counties to push drug prevention here in North Florida. Next slide, please. I'm just going to pass this slide because the agenda is going to be all different now with the panel hitting a lot of this. So these are some of the commonly prescribed opioids that we'll talk about and that can be destroyed by some of the things we'll talk about today with the Deterra. Next slide. Responsibility. We hit on this. It's a responsibility of everybody that receives a prescription, and also those parents, those leaders in the community that are working with the youth and working with families and working with those that might be at risk. That it's our responsibility as a community to get ahead of this. Next slide. These are some questions that you could ask your pharmacist or your doctor whenever you're talking about receiving a possible prescription. When does it expire? When can I get rid of it? How do I get rid of it? And we'll talk about some of those as well. Next slide. This is really important here. Under Florida law, giving someone a pill not prescribed to them is a second-degree felony up to 15 years in prison. And possessing a prescribed drug without a prescription is a third-degree felony with up to 5 years in prison. So it's important to know and to educate our youth and those around us that sharing medication is not just a bad decision, but it can also get you in a lot of legal trouble as well. These are some safe storage tips. Obviously, keeping all the medication locked up, keeping it not just in your medicine cabinet, securing it, putting it in in a vault, in a little, there's all kinds of lockbox kits that you can have nowadays, that you can get nowadays to keep that so it's secured, so it doesn't accidentally fall into the wrong hands. Next slide, please. Here's some information here on accidental overdoses and how they can impact children, teens, seniors, even pets. One of the things that we're seeing now is people actually injuring their pets so that they can take them to get opioids to then abuse them. That is ridiculous. It is absurd, but that is a trend that we are seeing now. So, perfect. 3 minutes. All right, here we go. Next slide. Next slide. Disposal 101. Okay, this is where I really want to talk about the two practical things that I'm going to show you today, is how to properly dispose of medication. There are a ton of different methods out there, and we're going to talk about them here briefly. One of the first ones we're going to talk about is Deterra, right? Deterra is a substance, it's a charcoal drug deactivation system. Everyone's going to get as many as you want today as you walk out. It's super easy. You peel the top off, you put your prescription medication in there, you pour the water in, you zip it back up, shake it a couple of times, and it completely deactivates every pill that you just put in it. You can put patches in here, you can put liquids in here, you can put pills in here, and it will deactivate. There's multiple sizes. This is the medium, I believe. Yes, this is the medium pouch. There's a large, there's an extra large, but all a great way on how to properly dispose of medication. Other ways to dispose of medications. Next slide. Walgreens, CVS, Winn-Dixie, Publix, there's location. Almost every pharmacy that you have in your community will have permanent drop boxes where you can go and you can safely and securely dispose of any unused or unwanted or expired medications. Also, next slide. These are the 3 closest ones right here to this church. I pulled that up this morning. Next slide. DEA Take Back Day. This happens twice a year. It's typically the 4th Saturday in October and the 4th Saturday in April. The one that's upcoming, October 29th. If you go to the website here, takebackday.dea.gov, that's where you can find a location near you. You can plug in your address, your zip code, and it will tell you exactly where those locations are going to be hosted in your area. This is here just a couple of weeks. A great opportunity to promote within your organizations and go and clean out your medicine cabinets and get rid of those in a safe and appropriate manner. Next slide. We talked about Deterra already. Next slide. These are some overdose statistics that were pulled from the CDC website, so that you can pull all this from there. We talked a lot about some of these statistics today. Next slide. Lieutenant Rowley talked about the signs of a opioid overdose. So we've already talked about recognizing the signs, but this is just so you could see them on paper on how to actually recognize. And then next slide, we'll talk about treating the opioid overdose. The first thing is going to be calling 911, obviously, and then administering CPR and Narcan. For those of you not familiar with Narcan, we talked about it a little bit. This is a 2-pack. It's given nasal through your nose, and this is what it looks like. It's very simple. It's very easy to carry. You literally put it up the nose, spray it. That's 1 dose, right? Each one of these is going to come with 2 doses. We've got a ton as you're walking out the hallway this evening, so feel free to grab as much as you want. We've got plenty of extra, so take that. It can, as we've talked about, it could certainly save a life. And the more you have, the more you'll be able, if they did have that really strong analog of the fentanyl, so take as many as you want for that. Fast enough? I tried. Awesome. Thank you so much.
From that day forward, the Beaches Division of Jack's Chamber has presented this award annually to the
So you heard Councilman Salem talk about Bill Gulliford and how instrumental he was for Project Save Lives and laying that foundation. And I just want to say thanks to him, because when I first started this job a little over a year and a half ago, he was the first person I talked to about this, and he was gracious to spend almost an hour of his time with me sharing what he knew about this subject, and he's impacted so many people's lives. I don't know if we mentioned this, but he's a former mayor of Atlantic Beach. Is that right, Mayor Glasser? So a lot of community service in Jacksonville and across the beaches area as well, so we're grateful for him. So we have talked about the tragedy of this overdose crisis that we are experiencing as a community. We talked about all of the overdose deaths, the overdoses that are taking place, the fact that fentanyl is dangerous and that it's killing so many. And so we did that on purpose, because we want you to know the real narrative, the newest and latest narrative, and how much of an issue this is and what we can do to make an impact. But we want to end the night and end this event with some hope, because this is something that we can together, as we come together and work on this as a community and as leaders in the community and citizens, residents in the community, can see some success and some recovery. And all of the many nonprofits and treatment providers, for-profits that are working on this, many of you represented in the room today are watching online. We are so grateful for what you do. And so I have a real live success story sitting next to me, and I want to ask him a few questions, let him share a little bit about his journey. This is my friend Chris Colcord. He works for Beaches Recovery. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about what he does, and then share his brief story with us from the time that you were in addiction till now, when you actually help people who are in addiction.
Okay. I'm Christopher Colcord. I'm a treatment placement advocate at Beaches Recovery and Tide's Edge here in Jacksonville Beach. First off, I just want to start off by saying, my heart goes out to the families that have lost, loved ones, and sometimes I feel not worthy. Why me? Why did I make it out of that, dark pit that I was in, and why didn't they? I've seen lots of people that have passed away that were great people, just stand-up people, and it still feels weird to be able to stand up here and just be alive, period. Why did I get to, make it out of that? So I was watching this show that just came out not too long ago on Hulu called Dope Sick, and when I watched that, that was my life. I definitely fell victim to Purdue Pharmacy in that era. Had a knee surgery in early 2000s. There were several pill mills around Jacksonville. I went into those, and walked out with whatever I asked for. And I know when you're sitting here and we hear about the dangers of fentanyl and the bad things about it, and why would someone even want to do that? Why would you want to feel that? And the answer is it did feel good for a while. When I first used, I loved it. I fell in love. I had a love affair with opiates. It was like a warm embrace. It made me feel okay. I was able to talk to people. Things were okay. And it just made me feel like, I could conquer the world, and so that is, why a lot of people start off on opiates. First it was for pain, and then it was for pleasure. I continued to use those substances until it no longer became a choice. I wanted to quit. I was stuck in the grip of addiction for a solid 10 to 12 years, in and out of jails, in and out of detoxes. I was in detoxes solid probably 12 times, with a firm resolution to never do it again. I said, if I can just get the substances out of my body, willpower will be enough, because I don't want to use this again. And if you would have hooked a lie detector test up to me and asked me if I would ever use it again, I would have passed. And I said, no way, I'm done with that. It's ruining my life. I'm hurting my family. How can I continue to do this? Everyone around me, nobody wants me around anymore. I'm at my lowest point in my life. But I pick up again. Maybe one more time I can do this. Maybe this time I'll figure out how to do it successfully. And once I put any substance in my body, and I started off with alcohol, started off with, cocaine, hallucinogenics, all that stuff. But I had an addict mentality. It ran in my family. I come from a long line of alcoholics. And once I put that in my body, I can't stop. And just like the panel that was up here earlier, why won't he just stop? He has so much to live for, and the parents feel like they've done something wrong. What did I do? Did I not raise him right? And it's not that. I don't know what it is. And I spent a lot of time spinning my wheels, wondering why I am the way I am. Why can I not be normal? And when I finally came to the realization that I'm just not normal, and that's okay, so I have to be very wary of that, and I have to know that, I'm wired differently. That's all it is. I'm not a bad person. The people that passed away, they're not bad people. There are people that are stuck in the grip of addiction and didn't see a way out, and then you get to where you get so low that you just feel like I'm not even worth recovery. Why should I, I'm not worth it. I'm just gonna, I had come to the realization, I had come to be okay with dying. I knew I was gonna die at any minute, and I just kept waking up. And I wanted to die. And when I kept waking up, I always had an answer. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. This is what I'm gonna do this time. I've got a plan of action. This is what I'm gonna do, with no follow through. And when I come up with these plans of action, and how I'm gonna do this, why does that addict pick up again when he has so much, and he's got a family that loves him? I can't answer it. It's a physical addiction, it's a mental addiction, it's a spiritual sickness that I have, So that is, my addiction in the short form. So.
Well, thank you so much for being willing to share your story with us. I have a couple questions, and as we kind of wrap up here this evening, the first one is there's definitely, somebody probably in a room this size with this many people, somebody that's struggling with this issue, or maybe somebody that's watching via live stream that is kind of resonating with the story that you just shared, all the feelings that you had and the things that you've been through. And I wonder what you would tell those people who are in the grips of addiction.
Reach out for help. Talk to, just like a lot of the people have been talking up here, peer-driven, someone that's made it out of the grips, someone that survived. That's how I got sober. I looked to someone that had been in my situation, that had gone out of that, and I asked him, how did you do this? Why can't I stop? What do I need to do? I'll do anything, and they took my hand and they led me through, it saved my life. Took me through a program of recovery and put action behind it, and reach out to resources. Because Jacksonville is as big a city as we are, and all the community leaders in here, we all work together. It takes all of us, and I can call, a number of people in this room and just say, I don't know if this is going to work for him. Maybe you'll do better with him. And being able to look at that and having a care for the person that I'm talking to, and being able to seek the right treatment for them, because it's not an all one-time fit, at every place you go, but reaching out for resources and sharing everything that's going on with you, and being completely honest, and this is what I'm going, and why can't I quit, and just being upfront with that is probably the first step, and admitting that I have a problem.
I think that's so powerful, the simple action of just reaching out for help, and I know it seems simple, but it's probably so difficult. So we just want to say to anyone who's struggling, don't give up, right? Reach out for help, because there's a lot of resources that are available to you. And then the other question, and we'll wrap up with this, what would you say to people who are caring for those who are struggling with this issue, those people who maybe are feeling frustrated because that person they love and care about so deeply keeps turning back to that substance? What would you tell them?
Well, my dad's actually here tonight, and I can tell you, all the families that I work with now, and God has a sense of humor. When I was getting sober and I was asking, I want to help people. You know, I want to be able to help and use this as, you know, where my past can become an asset now, and I want to help people. And he put me in a position to where that's all I do all day long. Phone rings off the hook, and trying to help people with resources. And I can tell you, and I know it's hard, and you think you don't, you know, you want to love your children, you want to be for them. If I move them into my house and feed them, and, you know, if I keep him under my care, that he'll get sober and I'll be able to keep an eye on him. But it wasn't until, you know, my family would not help me financially. They would not put gas in my car. You know, they wouldn't do that anymore. And when the calls that I would get, and I know it's hard, you know, for a family, it was, I'll pray for you, son. You know what I mean? I really want you to get better. But it wasn't until I ran out of resources that I actually sought recovery. You know, when I finally said, I have no one else to turn to. You know, and then I turned to recovery, and I said those 3 magic words: I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. I want to quit, but I don't know how. You know, and a man was kind enough to take time out of his day and help me through that. I went into a treatment center. I went into detox. I got the physical addiction off of me. But, you know, just reaching out, even the families, they don't want to feel like they feel, I guess, I don't know, like they you know, feel like they failed somehow, and it's not that, but reaching out for resources and reaching out to someone that's been through it is, you know, it holds depth and weight. You know, it really does.
And we would also just encourage those family members, those people that care, don't give up on the person that you love. This is living proof here that it can work out, and there can be successful recovery, right? And so I want to ask Pastor Bobby, as he's coming up to kind of close this out, I would like to say thanks to everybody that's in attendance, everybody that's watching online. I want to say thank you to the people that we get to partner with, the organizations such as Beaches Recovery and all of those amazing partners that we have in the Jacksonville area, many of which have set up tables with information and resources. So if you're here, you know, and you're interested in finding out more, please go right across the hall after this and pick up all the information you can. And whether it's you that's struggling or somebody you care about, let's make sure that we get them the help they need. We have all the resources here in this room to take a next step. The other thing I want to encourage you to do, speaking of next steps and action steps, is on the way out, you're going to have to walk by a table full of Narcan and doTERRA, and you're going to have people putting that in your face and asking you to take it with you, and please utilize that. Take that doTERRA pouch home, clean out your medicine cabinets, get rid of all those prescription meds you aren't using, all of those over-the-counter meds that are expired, and then take that Narcan with you. You never know when you're going to come across somebody that has overdosed. And by the way, I don't know that we spoke about this much, but there isn't liability associated with helping somebody you know, who's experiencing an overdose and utilizing that Narcan for them. You cannot get in trouble. There's no wrong way to do it. You stick it in their nose and you know, dispense it. And you can really save a life by doing that, just those things. I want to say thanks to you, Pastor Bobby, and Beaches Vineyard Church. This is the type of church, by the way, if you're looking for a place to come where people care, that you need to reach out to. This is the type of church that you could do that with, and they're going to help you get the resources you need to do well, to recover, to be successful. And so thanks for letting us do this here this evening. Can we give Beaches Vineyard a hand, and Pastor Bobby, I hand it over to you to close it out.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'll just pray, and we'll close it there. But as I listen here tonight, I guess my prayer for myself and for all of us in this room, and those who are hearing these words, would just be that we would truly have eyes that see, that we would be able to see the truth a bit more clearly in the world around us, and that we would be able to discern the truth in the eyes of those in front of us, that we could understand where it is that we are being led and what it is that we are able to offer, that we'd be moved with compassion that would give us wisdom to know the right step, and that we'd have the courage to to take the step, whatever it is, acknowledging the challenges that will be inherent to it. But we ask for the courage to take the step, and we trust, Lord, that there is no such thing as alone, that you are always with each of us at all times. And that's something that we trust. And we pray in your name, Jesus. Amen. Be blessed, everybody. Thanks for coming.